here with my friend
Jennifer Guskin,
and we need your help. We are right now working on advocacy for combating human trafficking, and here's why. So we'll give you a little bit of background of our story and why we're doing what we're doing.
I was adopted as an infant by a couple who sold me throughout my childhood. I have been to Epstein Island and on multiple Lolita Express types of flights as a child. After I went public, Child Protective Services opened a substance-exposed newborn case, even though all tests came back negative, and they told me that if I wouldn't stop posting on social media, I would never see my daughter again. I started to connect how I was adopted as an infant and then sold throughout my childhood, how many other children who have been through the adoption, foster, and CPS pipelines have also been trafficked to Epstein's Elk.
And as many of you guys know already, based on the work that we do at the Kaysha Project, I'm an American Indian born in Canada under the Jay Treaty. My father and I were exposed in the improper contagion mitigation for the COVID pandemic in early 2020. As a result of this, I lost everything: a house, cars, corporate assets, jobs. Bank accounts were shut down in Canada, and I fled to the US as an American Indian, fully documented, and was trafficked by rogue agents in ICE and other agents in the government, and forced to live with single American men. I was even imprisoned for 7 months initially, and then trafficked throughout the states. Put on full surveillance tracking and wasn't allowed to leave the city, house, or state without permission, or work without permission. And that happened for many years, and I was on and off the streets because of that, and in and out of shelters. And that is just a small example of what many go through in this trafficking system, be it the family courts or otherwise. So that's why the Kaysha Project will be going to DC to speak with representatives and do live reporting. We're also going to be in contact with other families who are dealing with human trafficking, and through the CPS courts or through any other means, lesser versions of trafficking, and doing reporting on them live and otherwise. We will also be working on, we ultimately want to shine light on what's going on with the trafficking here in the US. And we also want to meet with various agencies in DC, and we'll be going back and forth for training sessions and other things so that we can be better equipped to help people deal with resolving some of the issues that we're seeing. We will also be putting forth petitions in government to help people get justice, and that's something that we have been working on already so far. We have some petitions that have recently been filed in the state of Colorado, Michigan, Texas, and Arizona, and we will be continuing.
But we can't do this on our own. We will be traveling to events and training courses, as well as DC on a consistent basis. We also have to get acceptable equipment, such as computers, cameras, interview gear, etc. There will be other miscellaneous costs that would also be like gas, food, and rooms if necessary.
So that is why we are working towards combating human trafficking, and that is exactly why we need your help. We cannot do this alone, and most what the Kaysha Project does is on its own dime. And so we do love and appreciate each and every one of you that support us and all the work that we do. As many of you know, we also live stream on Lindell TV every day. And everything we do, like I said, is on our own dime. So we appreciate all the love and support and all the people who do donate. And we would very much love and appreciate that still. Thank you everybody for your time and considerations. And thank you for all the support. And we will catch you guys in the next one, and hopefully we might see you guys in the future and come across you and maybe be able to do some great things together.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Kaysha Project podcast. Today we have Mariel Olcos. I hope I didn't botch that. She is a mother who has gone through some serious hardship for standing up after being a victim of or a survivor of domestic abuse. And just after calling the police to get some help, her life was completely turned upside down. And we have our host today, Stephanie Henson. And can you kind of just introduce yourself to the audience there, Mariel, please?
So I'm Mariel Allcause. I live in Massachusetts. I have a political science degree and humanities degree. I had a bright future in politics. I was asked to run for Congress and I was in local government for a while. And then all of a sudden, my life was turned upside down when I called 911 due to domestic abuse. I didn't know at the time, but they were never coming to help me. They were already conspiring with my abuser. And next thing I knew, I lost custody. I lost the home that I co-own, and I lost my home business. And I was homeless for 10 months and am just now on my second month in an apartment. So that's me.
Yeah. So
How-
yeah, this is this is crazy. You call the police
Oh,
to get help, right? And
Yep.
then instead of getting help, because I was looking at one of your things where you talked about they stalled you and convinced you not to leave, and then he went to the court to get an ex parte order, and then took everything,
Mhm.
including your child.
Yeah, yeah. So they gave him, like, it's on the body cam footage. I made it public. Like, the only thing that's not on body cam is my conversation with the officer outside, before I joined the conversation inside, where I was telling him that my abuser was ripping my child out of my arms and not letting us leave the house. Um, and then I was brought into the home with the other police officer and my abuser right there in the same room. And I just quickly learned that they were not going to help me. So I was being very cautious about what I was saying because I know the second they leave, I'm not safe anymore. So I don't want to fully open up about the abuse. They finally let my daughter and I leave the house for a few hours. And while I was outside of the house, that's when my abuser, who already had a lawyer that I didn't know about, ran to the courthouse, filed for full custody for me to pay child support, which that was never granted, and for me to vacate the home. And a emergency vacate order is supposed to be for imminent danger. I'm not a danger. I have no record. I'm like, I don't even kill flies. Like, I
Oh,
bring them
oh,
outside.
okay.
So
I just wanted to ask a question here because you said a couple of things, and I wanted to. So you went and called the police on your ex, correct?
yes,
Because
I
he
called 911.
assaulted you.
Yes.
Okay, so while you were there, the police are questioning you with him present.
Yes, at first, so I called 911. I was outside. He had taken my daughter again from me, so I was waiting outside. So we were separated, and when the police came, one officer was with me outside, one officer went inside with my abuser, and that's the body cam footage that I received is the conversation they were having. Um, there's no conversation with me outside documented, to my knowledge, but that officer did say that his body cam was on, but I have not received that footage.
And
Interesting.
yeah,
I know.
yes. So how is it that he was able to get a vacate order when you were the one who called for help?
So over time, I learned that I was dating. We were never married, but we did co-own a home. It's our second home that we co-owned, and at the time, our daughter was 2.5. She's over 3 now. Um, Sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
Yeah, how is it that he was able to get a vacate
Oh,
order
right.
when you were the one who called for help?
Yeah. So yeah, realized through the family court process after I was vacated and living out of my car and on the generosity of my friends that he is a con man. I knew he was an intelligent guy, but wow, what he has done is incredible. He defrauded the court, and they just went off of his word. He accused me of being an alcoholic. I'm clearly fully sober in the body cam footage, just asking, and I directly said, I am not safe. My daughter is not safe. And the police were like, well, if you don't feel safe, you can leave. I'm like, I need to leave with my daughter. Anyway, so he defrauded the court by saying I was an alcoholic, and the court with no due process, never meeting me. I have no record, nothing. They just believed him. He didn't even get dates right for when we started dating and bought houses and things. It was and it was a novel. He really wrote a novel, and I think that's what got the judge to believe him.
But what did the judge say is the reason why? They must have given a reason.
Well, that's another interesting story. So I've gone on for the record to get all of the court recordings, and the only court recording I cannot get a hold of is from that day when he went in to accuse me of being an alcoholic. So he convinced the judge somehow that I was an alcoholic and my daughter and him were in imminent danger. So and the judge just granted it without ever meeting me and no evidence, nothing, just his word.
The same thing happened to my partner up here in Minnesota. Like almost the identical. His ex-wife, he played professional hockey, and his ex-wife used his professional hockey fight videos to say he's a violent person, said he has a drug problem, made up all these lies about him, and he has not been able to see or speak to his daughters since June 28, 2023. And his dad has helped do this, which makes it the murder that he believes his father murdered his mom look very familiar, that there's an affair taking place. So these people are abusing, and all they have to do is write up their own narrative of what the truth is without any due process, like you just said. It's you're guilty without any process of going through and trying to prove that. And so I'm seeing a trend in these courts, and I'm thankful that you're sharing your story with us today about this.
Even in my situation, my ex-wife said that, well, yeah, did I use drugs before? Yes, I did. There was no drug use, and she admitted that and everything else like that. But she said, I fear that he's going to be using drugs again. And
that's her fear. Sell your fear to the court, and we can't do that. That's not how this works.
That's exactly it. Well, I think that he's going to do something, or I'm worried that he's going to do that. Well, maybe if you stop provoking people like taking a child, then you wouldn't have these reactions. But this is what happens in the court, and there's no rhyme or reason. Or he's like, well, he graduated from mechanical engineering, but he can't complete simple tasks. Really? Which is it? Right? That in itself is extremely contradictory. So this type of lying that you see happens in the court all of the time, but there's a reason for it. So continue. What ends up happening now after the judge does this nonsense?
So while I was homeless, I had to, there was a lot of psychological abuse, and me not even realizing how deep this was all running. He had gotten DCF involved too, and Department of Children and Families, who have closed my case. I've had a fair hearing. They said that it never should have been opened in the first place. So anyway, the judge put me on a breathalyzer for a month, clean. The judge even states, I have the recording, that clearly she is not an alcoholic. No alcoholic can just stop cold turkey like that and function. Alcoholism is actually the only addiction that you can die from the withdrawals. So it's very serious. And I believe he used this against me because his mother had just passed away from alcohol abuse. So this was an easy narrative for him to use. He accused me of having liver cirrhosis. I mean, the most egregious things. And then I found out that he So meanwhile, the judge tells me, okay, she's clearly not an alcoholic. Then they change their story in court to, oh, well, she must be on drugs then. She must be doing something to keep her off of the alcohol. So I did the hair follicle testing, urine screens, saliva, for about 7 months clean. And then they put me back on the breathalyzer when they gave me unsupervised visitation just to make sure. And meanwhile, I had lawyers.
I just want to say something to you right now. You should have said no to all of this.
Yeah, as I said, that's a human rights violation what they did to you. I would have said no, absolutely not.
The reason being is that there's that thing called due process. You're presumed innocent until proven guilty. The onus is on them to prove that you have a problem. And not only that you have a problem, but you have to demonstrate that your problem, it makes you a danger to your child. Because it's not that easy to take away a child from a person who A, has even a criminal record, or B, is a drug user. You have to demonstrate that those actions directly impact the child, because a lot of the times, even so, a child person might be a drug addict, or they might have an addiction issue, or they might even be a criminal. Taking that child out of that situation and put them into foster care ends up being much worse most of the time. It's better to give the parents the support they need to help their kids.
100%. Yeah. And so throughout this whole process, I got the DCF records while court is going on, about 2 months in, and I found out my abuser, was the mandated reporter. He's the one, like, even in the records, in writing, he's emailing back and forth with the caseworker on how to secretly pretend that they don't know each other and to just show up at the house and pretend that some random person called. Yeah, and I was running for office at the time, and the person I was running against, very different politically, so I just assumed, this is just retaliation, So I let the DCF worker in, 0 alcohol in the home. I let them go through my trash, recycling, under my bed, everywhere, nothing. Because my abuser's mom was dying of alcohol abuse at the time. So I made sure there was absolutely nothing to trigger him in the home.
Okay, so... no. Okay, you have the emails of him communicating with her. You have that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and what state again did this take place in?
Massachusetts. Supposedly the safest, most intelligent state in the country.
That's what you just have record of. That's a crime. That is a crime.
Oh yeah.
No,
I have a $14 million lawsuit so far. I'm about to file.
Yeah, you need to have them arrested.
Who are you filing it against?
I'm filing a tort claim that includes the judge, my abuser, his lawyer, 3 DCF workers, and the 2 police officers.
Where are you?
And you have an attorney working with you on this right now? You have an attorney?
Do what?
Right? You have an attorney?
No, I fired my attorney. I had an attorney in the beginning that told me if I talked about the domestic violence, I would never get back into my home. Then my second attorney is just an elderly guy that I just think needs to retire. He could not retain information very well and did not represent me very well, but very nice person. He believed me. And then I fired him on the spot, actually, recently during pre-trial, because he showed up completely unprepared and wasn't speaking to me for the prior 3 months. So I fired him on the spot. I filed my appearance. I filed my pre-trial memorandum. I filed 3 motions to the court. So the vacate order is now gone, so I can finally collect my belongings. The house is going up for sale. I have my daughter 3 days a week. Got more done in 1 day by myself than with lawyers over 10 months.
Isn't that insane that that's the way our system works? These attorneys, they are criminals, what they are doing to people. And I'm personally witnessing that in my partner's case. we don't trust attorneys. How can we trust them when they are working for, I feel like, these judges? They don't want to get on their bad side or whatever it is. I don't know. Yeah.
Their first oath is to the court. It is not to their clients. They have to appease the court. And once I realized that, I'm like, that's why they're leaving out all this evidence. That's why they're not filing these motions that I'm telling them to file. That's why they're not fighting for me in court.
It would be one thing if they were doing an oath to the court, which is to uphold the Constitution. But their oath is, they're also members of the bar, the judges and the lawyers, both sides. And so they have to still answer to that. And if they don't do things a certain way, then the bar will discipline them. And the bar is
they don't.
What?
They don't do. I'm telling you, there is something going on now that they are not. They're supposed to do that. They are not doing.
No. You're misunderstanding what I'm saying. If they don't follow the script that they're doing now to bend people over, the bar will go after them. They don't go after them for breaking the law. They go after them for not stepping out of line and not playing their criminal cartel game, right?
Yeah,
so if you cross the cartel, they come after you. That's exactly what they are. They're like the mafia. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's true. Family court is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Family court brings in more money than all other courts combined. It is so corrupt and not even constitutional at its core because there's no jury.
Exactly.
And I work 5 nights a week with an organization called Great. I'm on the board, and we help people, mostly pro se litigants with domestic violence backgrounds, represent themselves in court. We help write motions and things, although none of us are lawyers. We do not give legal advice. We just use ChatGPT and stuff like that to help them get what they need conveyed across to the court. And the stories that I have heard, there was even just one last night that I think is the worst that I have ever heard. So I'm really focused on her right now. It's a New York case. Her abuser is, the fact that she's even alive right now is blowing my mind. Every red flag that there is right before somebody is, murdered, she has that and then some. And she had full custody. She was on the protection list, so her address could not be given to anybody because he was that dangerous. Then the judge, all of a sudden, he filed after years, and the same judge just flipped and gave him everything. And now she has nothing. For 3 years, she hasn't seen her kids.
I'll put it this way. Okay.
Wow.
This situation, yes, this kind of stuff happens. Like in my case, my ex-wife tried to punch me in the face, or stood like she's gonna punch me in the face when I was holding our daughter inside of a church. She also actually has assaulted me while I was holding my daughter. She then, when my oldest daughter came, she attacked her and went ballistic inside of the church. Kids were crying inside of the mother's room and all this kind of stuff. My daughter, I called the police because I'm like, you're out of control. Then my daughter ended up filing criminal complaints. There were other complaints that she was implicated in as well that were very serious. But then when you go there, the judge goes, when me and my daughter are going into the court to punish me for my political opinion, has us both arrested, right? Entering the court. And for 2 different cases, and he was overseeing both of them. And then it went on and on and on. Then my daughter was had a guy pull a gun on her and did all kinds of unspeakable evil. This guy trafficked her, drugged her, raped her, put it online for profit. And they had no kids together. They weren't married, pushed into the family court so that they could go ahead and dispose of the charges and let him walk free. This is what you're seeing. right? There is
Hmm.
family courts. They need to be abolished. They should not exist.
Yes, I agree.
100%. This is why my daughter in the video is in Washington with the other girl who was trafficked on Epstein Island, because child protective services and the family courts are like the mafia. They're the worst courts on planet Earth. And the federal
Yeah, I agree.
government, actually, HHS funds some of the family courts, if you didn't know that.
Yeah, it is. It's horrific. I mean, I think in Great now, we've had over 700 people join at this point, which is just wild to me. And we have, I don't know, probably about 30 people on the regular. We're on 5 days a week, Monday through Fridays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time till really whenever the last person falls asleep. And we have lots of different breakout rooms for triage and one-on-one work, just general conversation. We have constitution courses, ChatGPT courses, and it's all free. And it's mostly moms. Statistically, that's just how it is. But there are protective fathers as well. And I'm working with a few right now. Actually, one has the same judge as me, which has been interesting. But it's a really big problem when we have judges that are acting as gods. And I'm atheist, but these
Yeah,
people they're acting as gods. There's interpretation of the law, and then there's just going completely off the rails and acting as God because you believe that your own thoughts and opinions are better than what we've laid in place, the Constitution being the bare minimum. And then we have other laws in place. One I helped get passed here in Massachusetts against coercive control and defining that as domestic violence. And then the judges and the police don't know anything about it. So it's like, so our problem is judges and police not knowing the laws that they took an oath to enforce.
Yep. I've been seeing that here in Minnesota. It's the same thing up here where they act like they're gods. It's whatever they say goes. And I'm like, this is unconstitutional. I mean, they signed off that I can't speak about what's happening to me. I'm being stalked and harassed by a former assistant principal of a high school who possibly murdered his wife. I mean, right? Just once the investigation's done. And they told me I can't talk about it on the internet. I'm the one who's being harassed and stalked. His son has literally had his daughter stolen from him and has been harassed and stalked, and like it's terrifying what these people are able to get away with, and that the innocent people are the ones who are being criminalized and pushed through this very corrupt system.
Yeah, New Jersey is really bad. I don't know if you know who Monica Ciardi is. She's facing 33 years in prison for a Facebook post.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Wait,
Yeah.
we need to take a commercial break. We need to hear from the
Okay.
Pillow Man.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 six-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship is sailed because right now, every order ships absolutely free.
Yeah, so if you need a pillow, go to mypillow.com/Karis or call 800-845-2942 and use the promo code Karis. You can get all the deals, and they have other stuff. They have beds and all this kind of good stuff. All right. So back to what we were talking about. So a lot of the what happens in the courts is that you'll see visually far more women being abused than you will men. The reason being is men don't talk about it. They don't. They just put it up and they go away and they die in their corner. And a lot of them will,
Mm.
some of them will just end themselves. That's just usually the way it is. So the numbers that you see are skewed, but women are getting definitely destroyed because the court system was designed to destroy the protective men first. And they had to do that first to have open season on the women. Because if the protective men were still not thrown through the meat grinder and getting it 6 ways from Sunday, they'd be ripping this thing to shreds. But they had to do this so that they could divide the home, and then they allowed the predatory men to gain more access while just smoking out the protective men that would stand up and say, this is nonsense. This is why women are getting destroyed 6 ways from Sunday now in the family court. And it's disgusting. 33 years for a Facebook post, it's absurd. For what?
Yeah, New Jersey is probably the most corrupt state, and it is, I believe, mafia based. Illinois too is actually really bad. There's a terrible doctor there diagnosing like every mom with Munchausen because they just go to the doctor. But yeah, so Monica out of New Jersey is facing 33 years for a Facebook post for speaking about her case. And not in great detail either, but she did, I believe, don't quote me, I believe she named the judge, and that was clear retaliation from the court to have her arrested. I do notice there's several cases like this where the abusive parent has a lot of connections and the protective parent does not. And
Or
they're
money.
just,
Yeah.
it's awful.
It's because they're targeted. That's why. A lot of these people, like, I mean, if you look at this from like a 40,000-foot view and you look at the amount of repeating patterns that you see that the only logical conclusion that you can come to is that there's an organized network of criminals that are operating within the family court system, because it doesn't matter where you look. You see in principle the same things happening over and over again. Like, you don't need to look at all the details because the details are unique to each case. But if you look at the process, it is always the same. And then they have people around those people that are targeting them. And this reeks the FBI COINTELPRO program. And that's exactly what ends up happening. And you get every person, if you start looking at them, you'll start seeing commonalities in the types of people that are getting destroyed in the family courts. Sure, they make some things look good because they have to, but the people that they're destroying, they're all got a lot of similar characteristics, and it tells you that this is deliberate. There's no other way to say it, and that's why the other side always seems to have more connections because they're getting backed by people to do what they're doing.
There is one thing that I believe everyone learns in getting a political science degree is follow the money. You will always, always find your answer if you follow the money. And so we have that on top of people with power complexes. Sorry, someone just started vacuuming out there. So power complexes are extraordinarily dangerous because at that point, the money doesn't even matter anymore. It's about having power. How do you control that? And we have these judges that there is no path to accountability. The Judicial Commission on Ethics or Judicial Conduct, they review less than 1% of the complaints that they get. So where is this path? So I'm on the board for suing the state of Massachusetts now in a class action lawsuit.
Where are you suing?
And yeah, we're getting ready to file. It's just getting everybody on the same page because we all have to be done in family court. But we're going to be suing the state because that is the only way. You have to follow the money. You have to hit their pockets. We don't care about the money. We just want to be safe and have our children. Something so simple. But there's this weird power complex of when a judge or a police officer, somebody realizes they've done something wrong, they double down, and they triple down, they quadruple down. They just keep snowballing this effect, and there's no path to accountability. So of course we're not going to get anywhere, us regular people. So that's the kind of the purpose of this class action lawsuit. I'm going to be the guinea pig, I guess, for more of a nationwide type thing, through great and obviously always wanting to partner with other people as well. The more brains, the bigger the brain, the smarter, and the more people involved, and the more people speaking out in unity, is going to be our biggest way to change this. We need press. We need people speaking up. I know a lot of people have gag orders, which is also unconstitutional. I don't. So I'm making sure my story is out as much as possible because I know not everyone can.
You have you talk about like the path there. The way the game is designed is that there's designed not to be a path, and that path can be blocked off if you take the path that they lead you to. The people who did this, I mean, and like systems analysis is something that I do, and it's ingrained into my head. It's not designed for people to win by following the path. The best chess players are the ones who take their enemy's strength and uses it to their advantage. And this is something what we kind of have to do, not only just doing that, but we also have to coordinate. Think of us just talking to a couple of guys on a podcast the other day, and I said to them, it was like, think of this like D-Day. You had to have the Americans take one beach, you had to have the Canadians take one beach, and you had to have the British take one beach, and they all stormed it 6 ways from Sunday. You have to throw everything at these people at the same time in order to win, because it's not going to be one single path of doing that, because they designed that to cut people off and just bog you down. They need everybody working together. That's the solution, right? So
the only way to combat power is through exposure.
Yep, yeah, I agree with that.
Yes.
That's why for me, having my case, it's like I'm just sharing on the internet what they're doing to somebody. I didn't harass anybody, and they're filing harassment restraining orders on me and getting it approved by judges who are on other court documents. And like, this is corruption. This is a conspiracy. This is defamation of character. There's perjury. There's all these crimes in one taking place right here in Rosemont, Minnesota. And like, we've called multiple law enforcement officers. I called one today. I have a voicemail I have to listen to now, but he hopefully can help me. I don't know. I've lost faith, honestly, in our whole system after what I am personally witnessing and hearing other dads in my area reach out saying that the moms are committing perjury on order for protections and having them approved just willy-nilly. I'm like, this is concerning because they're using it to keep the kids away from the dads. That's what's happening here in Dakota County for us. I know there's moms that have had the same thing happen here, but it's crazy how people are abusing the system. And again, there's no due process. There's no investigation. It's just whatever one person says is the truth. And if you have money, you're good to go. If you don't, you're screwed.
It doesn't matter about money. I tell you this right now. It matters on what side of, if you're destructive, they will support you in this. And I've seen this happen. And in my own case, like the millions of dollars spent on court cases that would be impossible for someone else to afford. Like, I was running lawfare against a lot of people that even the government people were complaining about it because of the ridiculous amount of, because every time they would do something illegal, I would appeal it because it's my right. And so I'm not going to let you take this. You're going to have to fight for every inch if you're going to steal. And they paid for it because it was necessary. Because if they lost that, then they would have lost a lot of other things. And it's not just our kids. These people are sick in the head. They're looking at it, it's a system of slavery. This is what it is.
It is.
And so when they think that they own you, you're playing a different game. This is not like the regular guy that's trying to get some money on a protection racket. They think that you are the commodity. They own you, and they're going to do with you as they please. It's a completely different mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the biggest things I realized in the beginning. I'm like, what is mine if my own child that I birthed can be taken? My home that I worked my entire life, it was my third home and it was my dream home. And I bought that house for my daughter. I wanted her to never have to worry about housing, no matter what goes on in this crazy world. I wanted her to have a home in a safe neighborhood with good neighbors. And that was taken from me. I mean, what do I have? And then what's the process for any accountability or for me to be able to speak up? Because the local police won't help me, the state police won't help me, the district attorney won't help me, the AG won't help me. I've reached out to all of my state reps and some senators, and it just seems to keep falling on deaf ears. And here I am. What a concept. I'm just a mom that wants to be a mommy to her little girl. And how am I terrifying this system so much that the district attorney brought in people to have me removed from their office when I just asked for an appointment? That's my most recent experience. I just walked in. It was my first time ever in there. I don't know how that stuff works. And on the coffee table, there were these pamphlets that say, if you're a victim or a witness, you're in the right place. You're in the safe place. And we'll listen to you and we'll help you. And this is all the work we've done for victims. And this is all the justice we've done and all the people we've helped. And I'm like, wow, this is great. Next thing I know, I look up, and there are people that don't even work in the office telling me that I need to leave and that they're there to de-escalate the situation. I was literally just sitting there reading their own pamphlet. It was unreal.
The reason why the people are scared is because they understand the role of a parent. They understand them very well. And when parents are instructing their children properly, a mother has more influence on shaping the world events than a king sitting on his throne. There is no more influential person on planet Earth than a mother. And the second most influential person on planet Earth is the father. These are the ones who shape the future of the world. This is why they fear people who want to teach their children how to think and to do what's right, because they are the biggest threats to their regime. This is why they are terrified.
That's actually I've never thought about it that way. That you're having me think over here, Dale.
I think these are the thoughts that I'm having, and this goes too deep. I am so sorry, but me and my partner have done our own separate research and came together and had the same epiphany of what's happening in our country. And if you look at what happened in Nazi Germany, how they took over through the schools, the media, and the churches, and you take a look now in America at what's happening, this is the Nazi regime. The tattoo that they put on people's arms, your number is your social security card. I mean, we are slaves right now, and people have no idea. We just go to our work and comply, and until you're put in a situation like you or I, you don't start questioning anything, where you're just like, wait a second, we're being harmed here. Something's happening here, and the amount of abuse that takes place through the hospital systems, through the school systems, through the churches. There's so much abuse taking place on children in all these institutions that we are forced to send our kids to. We feel like we're forced. We have to get them vaccinated. We have to do all these things. And then you take a look at the science behind everything of what is happening in psychological warfare. We are experiencing psychological warfare right now as we speak. And most people are unaware. People are waking up, But I feel like so many people are so unaware right now of what is actually happening because we've been brainwashed and distracted by so many things in society.
There's a good study behind that. In my humanities degree, studying I wrote my thesis on the social construction of gender, but that also it can blanket a lot of things. From the day we're born, we're seeing ads and magazines, newspapers, logos everywhere. I mean, everything we look at, there's something attached to it that is trying to sell us something or tell us something or teach us something. And so it's so ingrained in us. So I found that really interesting in my gender studies, and also in racial studies. That's also a thing. And we're seeing a lot of that in the court system. There's still a lot of sexism. There's still a lot of racism. It's not gone. It's definitely still there. And you add that on top of money hungry, power hungry people who you can ask for FOIA requests. You can make FOIA requests to see if there are lump sums of money that a judge put into their property all of a sudden. That's evidence to them getting payoffs. And that's happening a lot. There's a judge that Kelly Patton, who's a PI, she did a background check on a judge in Illinois, and this judge came back with like 4 criminal convictions, and they're somehow sitting on a bench upholding the law. Excuse me.
Because they're easy to control when they have that kind of background. They put people in positions like this. This happens all the time, right? Like, for when you look at situations and look at human nature has not changed over time. People will always do wrong things and whatnot. But what we're looking at is men and women. The thing that we've been told was men and women were the same. They're not. They're complementary and they're designed to be. Because then when you have both perspectives, you have a complete perspective. But then when you put them in situations where they're at a disadvantage, this is where you have problems, right? Because if you stick one woman in a group of men when they're doing male-oriented tasks, they're going to be at a disadvantage. It's the same thing if you took a man and put him in a group of women with female-oriented tasks, he's going to be at a disadvantage because some things we're just better at than the others on average. And it's supposed to be that way because then we both bring different things to the table, especially when we're raising our kids, which is the most important aspect of human society, because if we don't make more of ourselves, we're all dead, right? Like, so reproduction right at the top, but now society lowers it and changes the way that we value things. And we have to start reevaluating things because if you're having a family, your life should be geared around your family because you can replace money and things, but you can't replace those kids. And if you traumatize them, it's like hell to try to undo. And if it goes too far, sometimes you can't. Right. And so we've got to, I mean, these people.
Well, that's why I'm saying these schools, like I've grown up in this same area for 20 years and I'm homeschooling my daughter. And I've gotten so much backlash from family and friends and people, but it's like I went to these schools and I watched students get abused by teachers. They're losing their basic human rights. I watched children pee their pants because they were denied the right to use the restroom. You know what I mean? And then these kids are made fun of then by other kids for peeing their pants. And then they're all the rest of their high school or their school career in this area, they're known as the kid that peed their pants, and it goes on forever. And this is traumatizing for children. And then you can't get a drink of water. You can't eat food. Like everything that these schools are doing is a violation of human rights. And we are putting our children in these institutions willingly. I mean, they're like little prison camps is what they are for our children. And they're being indoctrinated and not learning how to think freely. And when they do have a disagreement with a teacher, they get a bad grade or there's some kind of retaliation on the students who do stick up for themselves. And then now you're hearing about autistic kids who are being abused by teachers here because they can't deal with it. And these meds they're on are causing more behavioral issues. And these schools just can't handle the kids in these schools anymore. So we need to take our children back and go back to basic living of growing our own food and helping one another succeed in life, where we all are coming together to raise each other's children. Because the system that's raising us is destroying the family. It's destroying humanity. That's what I'm personally witnessing.
So
Yeah, the current system that we're in right now is a capitalist theocracy. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's all run on money.
Mm-hmm.
it's also run on a lot of. I mean, these people are doing very wrong things. I would say that it's run by cartels, not capitalism. This is like, I mean, there's one thing about making money, and there's other things about killing people for profit and torturing them. And then, I mean,
we do in hospitals, organ harvesting. I mean, people are brain dead, which is not a real thing. If you're brain dead, you'd be dead. Like your heart would not be. I mean, everything be shut down, and they are putting people on meds that keep them in a coma. And then, they're brain dead. Now you got to harvest. They get paid $1 million a heart, I think. And so there's people who could have survived at these hospitals, the ventilators, all of it. Like we just experienced a Holocaust. This is what I feel like.
And then they go after your children. And this is where, that is the worst thing that you can do to a parent, is to steal their children. And when they do this and then they drive you into poverty, this is human trafficking. Like when you use, and you can go read in Title 18, and if you use improper use of the legal system in order to put people into certain states of living or getting involuntary servitude and so forth, coercion and deception and fraud are things how you can get people to go in and do things for you or gain work and so forth because you're forced by lies. That is trafficking. That is slavery. This is these people just need to be stopped. That's all. Like, sue, yes, but I want arrests. I want people to go to prison. I want people to know that you don't do this ever again, and they need to have a message sent to them, right? Otherwise, they'll do it again. Hands off the kids. Sorry.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like the absolute worst thing you can do to a parent that wants to be a parent, is to take their child. I will never forget the sounds that came out of me that I didn't even recognize as my own voice when they took her from me and gave her to my abuser, sole custody, legal custody. And for what? I'm guilty until proven innocent. And I've proven that I'm innocent over and over again. Now the judge is coming around and starting to be more, I guess, empathetic towards me. But at the same time, I'm like, you still violated all of these things and I'm still going to sue you. Because I have to at this point, because it's not just me, it's so many people, and you don't mess with my friends,
Yeah.
And everybody in great, they've become such sisters and brothers to me that I have to, I can't look away. I have to do something.
All right, I just wanted to say we're running up on time, and I know you have an appointment to go to. So, how can people help you and reach you?
Honestly, right now, you can look me up on Facebook. I have a pinned post. And the pinned post that is public has links to all of the footage, video footage, me going to the local police, state police, the district attorney, me telling my story. I have a petition. I have a GoFundMe. The GoFundMe I haven't been as focused on because I have regular work now, but I'm still not able to pay certain bills, like my electric bill. I haven't been able to pay yet. So hopefully, but I don't think they're allowed to shut it off in the wintertime. So I think I might be okay for a little bit. But if you look up Mariel All Cause, my full name is actually Maria Elena Mariel Olcos Verdun. So it's very long. If you see that on Facebook, that's me. And the pinned post, watch the videos, share the videos. You don't even have to tag me. You can just share them, use them for whatever you need. I don't care about like my name being big or anything in this. I just want the evidence shared, and I want it to help people. I've posted it publicly to help.
All right. Well, thank you for coming, and guys, support her. I've got some of her links in the description if you're watching on Rumble and Facebook. So go follow her and support her. We need more people to get the stories out. Please share this if you have access to do this. And I will close with a prayer. And if you're watching on Frank's Beach, Lindell TV, whoops, you'll see it the next day. But for those who are watching on the stream, stay on the stream. After Mariel goes, Stephanie and I will be getting to continue on. So I'll close with a prayer here, and thank you. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the work that you have done, and bless Mariel in her efforts to have her child return and to have her life put back together, and watch over all the mothers and the fathers that are out there trying to fight for their children, and bring them together to rebuild families, their community, their churches, their nation, so that we can have some peace and prosperity for the children until the work is done and we see you coming in the clouds. It's my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much, Dale. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
All right.
Thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate you.
And thank you
Thank you for having me.
And we'll see you again soon.
Okay.
Hey everybody, Kaysha here. So today I want to talk to you a little bit real quick about Tina Peters' case. So on April 9th, 2024, myself, Maureen Steele, and Ann Vandersteel all went into the state of Colorado to file a petition for redress of grievances. Tina Peters actually also signed this petition. In fact, she actually had exculpatory evidence related to the election fraud that was outlined in the petition that was not allowed to go into the court. The petition was not brought to the floor, and as a result, Tina Peters was unlawfully imprisoned. My father, Dale Richardson, was actually tortured in the state of Colorado to suppress his evidence of treason against the United States, which was based on improper engineering controls which allowed for the spread of the COVID-19 virus, which was likewise created at Wuhan by Peter Daszak and the EcoHealth Alliance with the pathogen, which were handed over to the Chinese by the Winnipeg Biolabs. This created the circumstances for widespread election fraud. My father Dale and I are friends of Tina Peters, who has been politically persecuted for standing up for the liberty of all Americans. And she, as a sister in Christ, has been persecuted like I have for standing up for the liberty of all people. In the state of Colorado, women and Christians are being persecuted on monumental levels, and I'm calling for everyone to stand up for Tina Peters in every way possible, including using the CARES Project Action Plan to compel the state government to put the petition for redress of grievance to the floor so that Tina Peters can petition before the state house that belongs to the people. And if Colorado continues to deny a Republican form of government, we will implore that Congress and President Donald J. Trump initiate Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, which guarantees a Republican form of government, to the states and use that just power to intervene and provide what the Constitution has ordained. The time is upon us to come together and stand united as people, and let the world know that we stand together to preserve this perfect union for all Americans and our posterity. That is why, y'all already know, I'm going to leave you with my favorite quote. The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who cannot be bought or sold. Men who in their inmost souls are true and honest. Men who do not fear to call sin by its right name. Men whose conscience is as true to duty as needle to the pole. Men who will stand for the right, though the heavens may fall. Ciao, guys. Hey, everybody.
Of course, my mouse doesn't like to work whenever I'm doing the show. It works perfectly when I'm not, but I mean...
Hey, it's okay. There's mistakes happen. You know, things happen. It's that we just go along with it and just let it flow, right?
Yeah, just like I got something stuck on my foot. But that's okay. So we're kind of back. That was one of the worst situations that I've seen for a...
I'm speechless right now. Like, I think about all of the rallies I used to organize and all of my pro-Constitution friends who had their guns and freedom of speech. And I'm like, where are you now? Where are you men now who said that you were all about pro-Constitution and pro-freedom, and the cops, you know, the police officers who I was friends with at one point, and now I don't trust law enforcement. After, like, they've become a gang. They've become their own gang, and I didn't know why Black Lives Matter was marching before. And now I have a little more compassion for why maybe they may have been marching, what these law enforcement officers and what they've been getting away with that I had no idea about. Until it happens to us, we have no idea. And now I'm seeing corruption taking place even in my little small suburb town, right? Like, it is disgusting what is happening all over the place, not just in Minnesota, but it sounds like in Massachusetts, in California, and Florida. I mean, there's all these cases all of the United States that are coming out about how they are trafficking our children and how they are destroying the family. It's very concerning.
Yes, and this is what people don't seem to understand, is that there is a complete attack on the family on all of these in many areas, and people aren't looking at it and looking at it in the necessarily maybe the right way, because a lot of factors are adding into the destruction of the family, and a lot of it is the breaking down of our they call it gender roles, but they're actually sex roles, because there are things that we definitely need to have, because women need to be good women to be good mothers, men need to be good men to be good fathers, and that's
Provide.
This is yes, and providing means more than money. This is where a lot of people don't understand, and this is where a lot of people get off track. Is money necessary? Yes. But what happens to good men? Look at with your partner. I mean, they want to destroy him, right? Like that's what happens. And so the more of a threat that you are, the more they get destroyed. So a lot of the good men may not necessarily have a lot of money at that point in time, and they do that, so they get overlooked, and then they allow more weak men to get money because they know that this is what's needed, and then they come in and give them the opportunity to go after the good women and then bend them over, because they're like, well, and then if all you're seeing most of the time are a lot of these weak men in the spotlight, then what you're going to be like, well, I guess this is what I have to deal with.
So you're looking up to, yeah. I mean, I have noticed, I mean, it's not even just about the weak men or strong men. It's just that this whole system in general, you're taking the side of the abusers. These domestic abusers have gotten so smart with what they do. And I was never physically abused by my ex-partner, but his family were very conservative Christian, and they stalked and harassed me. My own family has stalked and harassed me, thinking they actually own me as a human being, And then when I chose to leave my abusive relationship, which it was a mental abuse is what was happening to me, and I was completely unaware when I was in the situation. I fled the state to North Dakota, had a place there that was prepared for me and my daughter I could homeschool her, I could work, I could do all this stuff there. And because I made that decision for myself and for my child, I had my own sister threatening CPS on me, saying that she was going to take my child away from me. And it's like, on what grounds? Who are you? Just because you don't agree with my view, it was just the whole thing was insane to me. And thankfully, they had no grounds to remove my child from me. But to have that threatened by your own family members because of their own personal views is a very terrifying thing to have happen.
That's crazy. That your own
so families are turning into families. These are Nazis. Like the Nazis are your own family members, and that's what I personally was saying. Like they're telling on their neighbors, they're telling on people because they're living lives that maybe you might not agree with. Right. I'm a very free-spirited person. I've always been a very free-spirited person. I've organized rallies. I've spoken my truth. I've always been very outspoken on everything I do and say and all of that. And people will use that against you, but I'm doing it to empower other people, not to, make myself look crazy.
Well, yes. And they're having a lot of this, like, you're seeing a lot of this craziness going on because of the way our society is. Like you being you homeschooling your children makes you a threat to this system because what they end up doing is they look at your child and they observe them in school. And one of the reasons, like you look at the layout of the schools, you mentioned this about the Nazis, the Prussian school style system, right? The having the desks in rows and everything else like that, and then compartmentalized.
And the bell ding ding on the next class.
It was to wire you to go into the factories because they needed to have people coming into the factories so that they would end up being able to be part of the Industrial Revolution. Because the Industrial Revolution is where we began to trade our freedoms for conveniences. And they knew this. And you look even the way that they marketed to people, they marketed before, well, this is reasonable, you need this, and this is going to help make your life better because you can do this, this, and this. They don't market that way anymore. They market in ways to make you feel better and so forth. And then when you look at what's going on in the schools, like, I mean, let me pull up a clip here, find here a couple of things here about what they do in the schools. But you can sit down and see that the schools are definitely a threat. Like when they come in and they start doing all of this gender filth with the kids and telling them that they're women when they're men, or telling the women that they're men and men that they're women, and doing all of these surgeries and so forth. I'm going to pull this up here. Hold on here. Yeah, well, it's just a short clip. But this woman went ahead and was changing, giving people puberty blockers without their parents' consent. Listen.
Puberty's bad enough, but if it's the wrong one, it's really bad.
Dr. Johanna Olson Kennedy is the medical director at the Center for Trans Youth Health and Development at Children's Hospital, Los Angeles.
These youth that are going through the wrong puberty, it's a very precarious time. It's when I worry about them because there's enormous rates of self-harm, cutting, burning, and other kinds of bodily harm that's self-inflicted, but also depression, anxiety, and suicidality.
Well, it's funny she says that because I feel like people who I have no problem if people want to transition at 18 years old or whatever. You know what I mean? It's for me when it comes to that, I used to be so against it. And I'm like, I know someone who's transitioning, but I can also see on her Facebook that maybe he now. All the partying and drinking that comes with these lifestyles of people who do change. It's like they never grow out of this childlike mind, I feel like. And you see a lot of people who have transitioned who have regretted it. And there's people who are committing, the suicide rate is the highest. It's not always because they're not accepted. I mean, everybody in their life has felt unaccepted in some type of way, We've all been discriminated against in some type of way. So for them to play this victim card that I'm transgender and that's why we're committing suicide. No, people commit suicide because they don't love who they are and something is wrong in their life. That's why people do that. And so when you see these people using the medical system to medically castrate them and destroy their biology and their body with these puberty blockers and everything else, that is destroying humanity. And people are just, again, going all along with it because it's a trend, I feel like. And so I don't agree with the schools pushing their own opinions on that. I think that maybe talking about an acceptance of people who might be different might be a better approach to that in these schools. But to allow teachers to come in and you've seen parents who have gotten taken away too for not allowing their children to transition. I'm like, that's insane to me, you know?
Yes, I think what they're doing here is that they're going in and doing things that they shouldn't, and they're teaching kids to do the wrong things, because when you're this whole transgender agenda tells people that children that they should trust people who are not their parents. They should trust people who are doing things in secret and deceptive and so forth. And these are tactics that are used to groom children by pedophiles and traffickers. And if you're using the same tactics as pedophiles and traffickers, why? And then you wonder why trafficking is so rampant.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I think people might just be unaware sometimes that they're even doing it. I know for me, like I've had situations, again, I think I told you this, where I was in high school, and because I thought in society, you know, guys want pretty girls, I would collect girls from my high school and bring them over to the parties in Evergrove Heights where I would party, you know, because I wanted my guy friends to have ass. And it's like, that's kind of a form of trafficking. And some of us are unaware that we're even a part of it or doing it. It's just that we were abused. So now we're projecting our own abusive, the things that were used on us on other people. And I've noticed I've done that. And that's when I took a step back and was like, what am I doing? I'm being also abusive in a way. And I need to stop what I'm doing and fix this. So that way I can fix the future. If I do that with my daughter and treat my daughter in ways that I was treated as a child, or that other people have treated me, then she's going to go on and mirror that same behavior to somebody else. And that's where we need to come together and say, take a look at what we're doing and how we're raising our kids, and really change the way we're doing things, and stop putting them in these school systems that, you know, you have everybody in their homes raises their kids differently. And some people are more abusive than others. Some parents are more abusive. And then you have these abused kids going to the school system, abusing other kids. Now you have this huge cesspool of abused kids abusing other children. And so it's not even necessarily that it's like, I don't think that people are even aware of how deep this goes, where it's all psychological. People have no idea they're even doing it. And we can't blame them for that, but we need to bring awareness to this so people can be aware of what they're doing, you know?
Yes, they are, because men and women are very different, right? And the people understand this, that are doing this, they understand this very well. And the women are more accommodating. They want to be nurturing, and they want to make people feel good. And so they play on those tendencies to get them to do wrong things. And this is what needs to not be like. This is so sick. And then they prey on them, use the men that are trying to do what's right to twist that to abuse them as well. And this is why women are more likely to take these things, because they'll be shamed into doing them. And it's disgusting. That's why this transgender nonsense is more prevalent in girls than it is boys now, because of that. Because they're
Well, I think a big issue that I saw with myself, like when I was younger, here's where I think it's kind of stemming from, is that you have these very religious parents, right, who are very much about, this is a man, this is a woman, this is how a boy dresses, this is how a girl dresses. And even my own sister got upset that the daycare, she's like, I will not have my son in a dress, like was so offended by it. But when we were kids, we had a neighbor boy named Cecil that we would dress up in dresses, and not because it was transgender or gay. We had no idea what any of that stuff was. It wasn't even a thought in our mind, but we would put him in dresses because we thought it was funny. It was comedy for us. And now you're seeing these religious parents who are so like, they're so strict about what their kids wear, about how they dress. Even for me as a kid, I was forced to wear the clothes I didn't want to wear. I was forced to wear my hair a certain way I didn't want to wear. If I wanted to dress like a tomboy, I didn't have that option as a kid. And I feel like because kids are not allowed to dress how they want to, they're having these identity crises which might be another cause, not saying that is the cause, but it might be another cause to all this transgenderism that's going on, is because you have too strict of parents dictating what their kids are wearing throughout the day. And I'm seeing that as an issue. Again, it's another violation of a human rights, where my daughter, I homeschool, she likes to hang out in her underwear. I don't care. There's nobody here, whatever. She wants to be free. When we go out in public, she puts clothes on and she wears what she wants to wear. She wants to wear a Stitch costume, wear a Stitch costume. She wants to wear whatever, wear this. I don't need to please other adults on what my kid is, how she's presenting herself, right? As long as she's being respectful, it shouldn't matter what she looks like or what she's wearing. And I think in society, we've gotten away from that like we should allow our children to express themselves authentically. And because we're not, you do see a lot of these kids being kind of confused about their gender. Oh no, only boys wear that. Well, I want to wear that, so does that mean I'm a boy? And that might be causing some confusion there.
Well, I think that a lot of it comes in is because when you put too much control on your child, then you end up going the opposite way, which is, you have to be very careful on this, because sure, there has to be some distinctions between boys and girls. There has to be, because you need to teach that there's strict boundaries. And with men and like men and women, they're different. Like having a daughter, I had to reevaluate things, because it would be easier for me to raise a boy because I understand all of that. With a girl, I had to be like, oh, wait a second. Not like me at all. Like, you know, dealing with the young girl growing up with all the moodiness and different things like that. And I'm like, I don't get it.
That's a lot. The girls are a lot.
Right?
I have a daughter. I know.
So but men, we're different. Men need strict discipline, like nobody's business. And they need it in a proper manner, but you got to do it in a manner that the kid is understanding. Because if you just come there and just like, they don't know what they're doing, they're just gonna do something else when they get older. But you need to teach them the reason why, right? Because when kids begin to understand why they're doing, because there are things that your parents might have taught you and you thought, well, you know what you're talking about, and you get older and you're like, just kidding, you were right? Like, you know, like paying bills. You're like, oh, I can do whatever I want. And then you're like, oh, if I didn't pay that, they cut off the lights.
Hard. I didn't know it was like, I didn't know it was like this. Like, you were right. And now I get it. I'm so sorry for the way I acted. I'm getting my karma now. You know, that's kind of how I look at it.
But if we did more of teaching people how to think, or the reasons why they're doing it, so that we can show them from cause to effect what is happening, we'd have greater success. Because you're like, okay, well, you know what, you can find it out. But then if you told that, like, because I do this with my daughter, I tell her all the checkpoints all along the way, and this is what's going to happen, and she be like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Then it blows up in her face, and she's like, everything my dad said was true. She came back and she's like, just kidding, right? Like, but that's what you want.
At least you allowed her to make, but at least for you as a dad, you allowed her to make that mistake, because a lot of parents don't even give their kids the time to make the mistakes. Like, even for now with Avalani, I didn't know how I was going to do this homeschooling thing, but I've given her enough freedom in the home to make mistakes so we can correct them. I want to see what she does naturally. And then I see what she does naturally. Like, okay, this is why we don't want to do that. Here's the consequences of these actions, you know? And I feel like she's learning that way, where I'm giving her that space to make the mistake. And I will share, if she says she's going to do something, I'll say, well, here's the consequences if you do that. And you can do whatever you want, you know? So I think it's healthy to let your kids, like, you can share the consequences of what could happen, but giving them that space to still make the mistake, and not locking them in their room and saying, you can't go do that, you know?
Yes, you want to limit the mistakes, because you want the ones that you can let them learn from, not let them make the mistakes that will kill them, right? Like,
exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So, within reason, give them freedom. You know, don't let them play with knives or anything. But
because when you have people that don't put restraint on there, it's actually better to have too much discipline than none at all. Because when you don't have discipline, then you don't know anything about boundaries. Like, having too much boundaries, you're like, okay, you know what? I just need to expand them out a little bit more, and then we can stop here. But when you don't have boundaries, you have no idea how to set them. None whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then when you do these things, because you can abuse somebody by actually abusing them, or you can abuse them by not giving them boundaries. And like, when you're looking at what is happening in the schools, whether or not they're abused by actual somebody doing something wrong, or not giving them boundaries, you start seeing the rise of, like, teachers that are molesting their children. And you can start to understand why, when people are doing things wrong, because this is another reason why people shouldn't be in the schools. But let's look at this clip.
Well, new developments in a case that shocked the country. The teacher impregnated by her 8th grade student will face a judge for the first time this morning. Our Sophia Ojeda is live downtown with the latest and some pretty serious charges against her, Sophia.
Yeah, good morning, Rachel. She is now facing continuous sexual abuse of a child after she admitted to having a sexual relationship with her 8th grade student. Prosecutors say 24-year-old Alexandria Vera, a teacher at Stovall Middle School, not only engaged in a sexual relationship with one of her 13-year-old students, the mother of one also got pregnant by the 8th grader. But in court documents, Vera says the student's parents knew about the relationship and they approved of it, allowing the teen to spend the night at Vera's home in Spring, where they would engage in sex on a regular basis. She told an investigator she would drop him off at home in the morning so he could catch the bus to school. The relationship allegedly lasted for 4 months, ending in January with a pregnancy that Vera terminated.
Wow. See, you don't know who's around your kids at these schools. You just don't know what your kids are doing. And I noticed that in school, that kids in middle school were, I mean, not with teachers that I knew of, but when I was in middle school, my peers were having sex in middle school, right? So now you have this cesspool of kids who are projecting their own stuff. Like, what if these kids have no idea what sex is and you have these other students coming in and teaching them these things to your kids? It's not just the teachers, it's the students as well, teaching other students, stuff like that.
Yeah, this is out of this is absolutely out of control. Like, I mean, and then you have some people that'll say, "Oh, well, what I wish that was my teacher when I was in school when I was with a 13-year-old."
You see how their minds work? It is how they work, though. That's how a little boy's mind works. They are sexual beings. Like, I saw it when I was in middle school. Men are and we are having that stolen from us. The sexual essence is being stolen by saying, don't have sex till you're married. I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm out of that whole religious when it comes to that. But I think that, to be honest, I was 15. So what is the age of consent when it comes to kids? Do I think adults should be having sex with kids? No. But what is the age? Like, we can't dictate when kids have sex and who they have sex with. I feel like if that's up to them, that's their own choice, I guess.
They actually, when you look at it, people who have more partners in life, it actually, conversely, it makes it more difficult for them to have longer lasting relationships. If you look at the statistics, it really goes down. Like, the higher amount of partners that have successful relationships, it becomes increasingly harder. And the reason being,
but we have to figure out the why in that. So I understand that might be true because I have had a lot of partners, I've had a lot of relationships, but the reason why I've had those relationships is because I didn't like the behavior that I was seeing, and I knew I was not going to settle for less than what I was worth. But I'm a very compassionate person, so I would jump into these relationships all in, having compassion for these men who have been through these horrible things, right? They're using me and selling me. And so it's not always that you have a bunch of partners because you're sleeping around. It's because you're knowing your worth. And I think some people, the reason why the religious get stuck in these long marriages is because they don't know anything else. So now they're stuck in this marriage where maybe that's not the right person for them. And maybe that's why that relationship is lasting so long, because they don't want to leave, because they're told if they leave, they're going to go to hell.
Well, first, when people talk about marriages in a religious context, most people don't know what they're talking about, because most people don't read and understand what the purpose is. Because if they did, they would think fundamentally differently about it, because most things that people being taught about religion are wrong, because people bring their own ideas and they don't read and understand for themselves. Whether people read the Bible or believe it or not, the one thing that I can sit down and say, it is a very accurate description of human behavior, because what I read and see what people do, they do the same thing, the same treacherous nonsense that we do. They're doing this. So I'm like, well, okay, if they made a list of all the things that they burned and blew up in their faces, well, why should I not pay attention to that and say, let's not make that mistake? Because there's some mistakes that you don't have to experience. You can learn from other people doing it, right? And
exactly.
And so people need to get back and understand how things work. And with men, multiple partners is extremely damaging to men. We are wired for loyalty. Men don't care if they feel loved. They want loyalty and respect. That is how what men want. They don't need to feel loved or any of that stuff. They just want to have you loyal and be respected. And this is how they are. When we As a man sleeps with a bunch of women, in the back of our mind, we cannot command loyalty by our actions because we are disloyal ourselves. And so
Mm-hmm.
for us, and in relationships, when there's a marriage that ends, men have a harder time dealing with it than women. This is why
Mm-hmm.
because of that wiring for loyalty. Like, I mean, a
Mm-hmm.
woman will go eat a bucket of ice cream and hang out with friends and then begins to feel better after some
Mm-hmm.
time. I'm saying on a reasonable human being. We're not talking about abusive people. Like, and I'm
Yeah.
saying on average. So
Again, comes
just
that perspective of it.
yeah, yeah. And so this is where it has and how women how like when they what it's described for sex for them as opposed to how
Mm-hmm.
it impacts men, they're very different, right? Because it imprints into their mind visually. And so
Mm-hmm.
that would be their ideal woman. But each time they sleep with one, then another gets imprinted over them. And then what their
Mm-hmm.
ideal woman looks like becomes very blurred. And then it becomes harder for them to find that ideal woman. And they keep looking because it's more blurred. And this is just kind of the way that we're wired. So when you look at those things, you see that its tendency is to make better decisions. And if you have sex, for men, it's worse than drugs. It clouds your mind.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, even for women too, it's the lust. It's lust isn't just a sexual thing. I've been realizing it's also you're lusting after material items. Like for example, my ex, we looked great on piece of paper. I wanted to run for politics. His sister run for office. His parents are both running for office. His family looked great on paper, but I saw behind those closed doors what was really going down. You know what I mean? So it's like I was lusting over having this family that looks good prominently in the area. But then what I was seeing was like the complete opposite of what I want for me and my family. It was just the yelling and screaming and swearing at each other and just like that's what I started waking up on how our politicians act behind closed doors and judges and attorneys is that when I started seeing it for myself, being within these groups. But I think again, going to just the lust, I think lusting is also, it's not like there has to be a connection when it comes to love. And I think a lot of us don't know what love is because a lot of us, again, we're trafficked through these schooling systems, through the hospitals, all this other stuff, where for me personally, I didn't have an emotional connection with either of my parents. I mean, I did a little bit, but I didn't love myself because they found me annoying or they wanted me to go play or whatever else where they weren't connecting with me the way that I needed them to. And so now I'm redoing that with my daughter where I'm connecting with her in a way that my mom never connected with me. And that's why I'm homeschooling her so she can know right from wrong and not be manipulated psychologically by these school systems and by what society is teaching her because society, it's been a big old, where it's like there's been so many different views throughout your generation, my generation, generations below. It's always a different cycle going on where people are living with what they're seeing in their worldview. And that's not necessarily like the way that we're supposed to be living, Everyone's just
Okay.
doing what they're told.
Well, and this is it. Like we need to have actually, let me just do the commercial break a little bit
Okay, sounds
here,
good.
and let me get that up here, and then we'll get back into this, so we don't have to worry about that later. Okay.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 six-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship has sailed because right now, every order ships absolutely free.
Yeah, so go get some stuff for My Pillow.
I actually have My Pillow and I have had it for a long time and I still have it and I love it. So, saying.
There you go. MyPillow.com/Karis, 800-845-2942. Use promo code Karis. So yeah, I think that I think that we really need to have discussions about relationships and how people come together from a practical basis, because
Yeah.
men and women are very very different on these
Yes, we
things,
are.
and the idea that they have them the same is caused the downfall. And then when you
Mhm.
look at like the abuse that you talked about, and then you watch like the effects of kids running and having getting into like sexualized in the classroom, and then they're
Mhm.
sexualized in, actually let me pull up this clip where they're sexualized in the classrooms. They're sexualized like with this transgender agenda. They're then
Mhm.
beginning to get, because like I mean here in Canada, they were giving them wooden dildos and telling them to go, yeah, like I mean, and all these things,
How
and
old is this?
these kids were like in elementary school, right? And
Wow.
then they're teaching them sexually, and they're giving books with show them depicting sexual activity, and then
Yeah.
you look at the fact that now they're having kids that are getting into pornography, and we'll pull up the clip where a woman talks about this, and then we're going to talk to a woman, look at a woman's relationship status after, because you're looking at all of these abusive things that happen when you sexualize a child young. They have no boundaries. It's
Yeah.
abuse, right? And
Yeah.
so then you listen to what this woman here says, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Do you think that porn encourages human trafficking?
I do. I think porn has, since the internet, has had a lot of negative effects. I mean, there's the couples that I meet on the road that come in that enjoy my movies, and there's that where I'm like, oh, that's so wonderful.
Yeah.
But that might be a 5 to a 10%.
Yeah.
I think it's changed the reality for young men because it is so accessible, and because the scenarios that Brazzers has us do is so believable that in their weird minds, because they've been watching so young and there hasn't been any sneak to it, they haven't been forced to realize that they aren't 18, they shouldn't be watching, and all they have to do is click the box that says they are.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what I think that's done is I think it's really affected the sexual history of these young people, and I think older men, Epstein, is a great example of this, and now we're going to watch this case unfollow. People with money are doing these things, and then young people are confused by these things. And what I've learned from young women that I'm mentoring in my travels that aren't involved in the industry is I'm realizing that young people are having less sex than ever, and young girls have been shied off from 1 or 2 experiences that they felt were violent and that I explained to them just came from porn.
Yeah.
The choking, the smacking,
hair
the
pulling.
spitting.
Yeah.
That's not, and for a young girl who's 16, that's what the 16-year-old boy's been watching. So the first time he has sex with her, he chokes her and she doesn't know why.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know what to do about it. And so they're having either sex with girls or they're not having sex at all.
Yeah.
And so I think what we've allowed our kids to watch and what we've failed here in LA because it's what we produce.
Right.
We failed.
I mean, I agree with that. I feel like not just porn, but for me, I grew up in the era of Jersey Shore. And then the reality TV shows that where people were partying. What was it? The Real World, right? It's called The Real World, and it shows people all in a house together, sleeping together, and partying. And so that's what I was doing at that age. And I don't want that for my daughter. I don't want her to be giving herself to whoever like I was. And that's why I am raising her differently, because I do notice that the things that you are seeing in your worldview are affecting what you do in your life.
Well, yes, and this is why when you start exposing the boys and girls, especially the boys are going to start acting out more. Their boundaries are going to be skewed, especially when they're a young child, right? And then, like for example, that 30-something-year-old woman that was, or 20-something-year-old woman that was sleeping with that 13-year-old boy, he's going to be screwed. His boundaries are going to be off. Then you start getting into activity that his brain is not developed for. Even though, yes, you're going to feel the sexual stimulation and so forth and all these things because you're going into puberty, developing into manhood, your brain isn't properly developed. And when you start giving them these things that they're not designed for, they're going to become more extreme with it because their judgment centers are not developed. And then with the lack of boundaries and the abuse, it's only going to get worse. And then after you've groomed them from being in elementary school with this sexualization, teaching them to be predatory and so forth, or to allow somebody to be a predator to them, which will then turn them into predators, then you
Yeah.
introduce them into pornography, and they're going to go very quickly onto the more extreme things. So by the time they're older, it's going to have a negative effect. This is like,
Yeah.
they're all designed to work.
Well, this is happening in the public school system, because I will say when I moved to Minnesota, well, I learned what a blowjob was in 3rd grade, which I feel like was a little too young, but it's because my friend's mom, who didn't monitor the things that she was watching and let her watch whatever she wanted to. And so I went over there and watched something I wasn't supposed to. My mom even told me I wasn't allowed to watch it, and I didn't listen. But then I moved to Minnesota, and because I got the last pick of the litter when it comes to friends, because now these kids who are the outcasts are the kids whose parents, have told the other kids, you can't play with these kids because they're the bad kids. The kids I became friends with. And we were watching porn. We were looking at magazines. We were in the AOL chat rooms talking to strangers on the internet, ASL, that whole thing. And these chat rooms, as I was in 4th and 5th grade doing this, and so now it's like I'm seeing how these school kids can really affect our psychological health and like all of that when it comes to sex, when it comes to porn, when it comes to all these things that's corrupting our minds. And again, it's not just the teachers, it's the students that are at those schools as well that aren't being watched in their homes, and not necessarily saying the parents should be controlling the children in their homes, but they're having a little too much freedom where they're having more access to things like this in their homes because the parents aren't hiding it or, monitoring it enough or whatever.
Well, they shouldn't have access to things like this. There should be zero access, right? Yeah. Like, you have to guard the minds of your children, but they structured our lives to do this. And then then you have this idea of having men and women competing in the same areas. When women began to go into male dominated areas, the inevitable result was that you were going to then have men coming into women's areas. This is cause and effect. And when the glass ceiling that they keep talking about a lot of the times, that's a woman becoming a man. Because when men are at the top elements of business, they're literally trying to, this is war between men and other men of what they've been doing. It's not saying that women can't do business, but if you expect to go in where men are going and using a lot of nonverbal communication that men understand and expect to understand what they're doing, it's not reasonable. It's like, for what women do with each other, men can expect to go in and understand that and beat women at their own game, and most men won't do that. Even the men that pretend to be women, I watch them, they calculate the circumstances and make the women come over to the men's side, and then they bend them over because they can't be women, right? And this is where we see these issues going on, and this is the lie that's being sold to us, and this is make people very unhappy and miserable, right?
Yeah. I just want to touch on something else, though, because I had this thought just now about kids and, like, when they have questions to parents. Like, my daughter, right, I'm pregnant right now. I'm expecting another baby. When I got pregnant, before I even got pregnant, she asked the question, how was I made? And it's really hard as a parent. At 3 years old, she's asking this question. And so at the time, I was able to get away with, because I don't want to lie to her and say a stork brought you, or, you know what I mean? I want to be honest with her. Whenever she has the questions, the natural questions that she has, I want to answer them honestly. And it is very hard as a parent because you almost assume in your head that they are too young. But I'm realizing that my daughter is not. And because I wasn't honest about a couple of things, I saw that because you had the talk to text, she can go look things up herself now on the phone. And so it's like, I would rather, like, when she asked, she doesn't have a father that she's been able to see, like a male figure that she's been able to see naked. I think we've shamed nakedness too much. I think that it's healthy to have a mom and dad who shower and are naked in front of their kids. That's just my own personal opinion because it is a very natural thing. And I feel like because I wasn't around that as a kid, it made me very shy around partners. But my daughter then, has these questions that she's asking me, and I feel scared to be honest with her. So I would rather me go find a very scientific image of a naked man and show her that, rather than her going and searching on the internet and finding porn or finding images that are, things that I don't want her to see. And so I think that we need to be honest with our kids when they do start asking questions, because I think that's another reason why kids are watching porn, is that parents are not honest with it. They shame their kids for having these natural questions and they shut down the conversation. They're, oh, you're too young. But if your child is asking these questions naturally, I don't believe they are too young for you to be honest and explain in a very scientific way what these things are, like how babies are made and whatever else,
We should talk to them and tell them at an age appropriate manner. right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that's what we have to do, and parents have to be the ones to do this because they have to gauge where their children are and they know best in that. And like, for example,
Parents aren't. They're not
talk about
connected. They're not.
when they talk about
What?
religious parents that don't talk about sex with their children. Well, there's a book of the Bible that's dedicated to the relationship with a man and his wife, and that's
Yeah.
in the Bible. So if you read about it, you're going to hear about it, and the kids will ask about it. But you're supposed to teach them about it in a healthy manner, rather than looking at from their friends, because most people don't understand the meaning of what it does in a relationship. Like, people will sit down and say, "Oh, well, it's just my virginity. It doesn't matter because it's just sex." It's like, that's not what it does.
It's not true. Yeah.
It's you the best the fundamental purpose for sex, because women are also wired differently than men, but this is in some cases true in different aspects. The greater the foundation that you lay in a relationship, the more pleasing you will have with your partner, because
Yeah.
the what reason why it is in this manner is that a man cannot focus on multiple women at once. He cannot. The idea is, the way that men are wired, they are to draw out the potential in their wife and their children. Men do this in a very different way. This is why men are the ones who primarily traffic women, because they can see when you're wounded very easily. They can see what you're good at and what you're not good at, and they're supposed to do is to help draw out the best in you so that you can be a better mother to your children, a better wife. And a wife does something differently, but she uses different skills and doesn't have the skills that the father has, because she'll bring out the best of the man by doing what she does as a woman, but not in the same way as a man does it to his wife and his children. And so when you're taking that man takes that power of observation, he's going to be able to help to fulfill the needs of his woman by looking at her and studying her and understanding how to do this. And this is why, when you look at it, monogamy is the best way to get this done, because you cannot divide your attention to multiple people to fulfill them in the best way possible. So looking from a what you need to do standpoint, this makes sense. And then you can learn and explore and please that person in a way that they're going to learn about that, not doing something that you learned from someone else, right? And and then you have all those things of distrust and so forth. This is why, when I look at it from that standpoint, it makes sense to me.
And there's so many perspectives to that, because I've gone back and forth on that same perspective as well. But I've also gone into, like, and I know that you might disagree with this, and a lot of people might, but I think that porn can be helpful as a tool for people who might want a little bit more creativity in the bedroom and might not know how to get that. You know, there are people who, I mean, are shy or feel embarrassed about this with their partners. And that's I'm saying, where one partner is good, because you can build that comfortability with that one partner. When you have a bunch of partners, you're like all over the place, where you are, like, for me, I'm very insecure with my body, you know, and I think that does kind of come from having so many partners, is that so many people have, you know, had access to my body, maybe shouldn't have. And that can come with a lot of insecurities. And thankfully, I've been able to overcome all those insecurities and overpower that. But for other girls that are sleeping around because they're looking for love in these men, it's like, you're not going to find it in these men. You have to find it within yourself first, and then go out and find a partner. And people are not coming to that self-love and acceptance before going in and having a partner, because we're told in society, like middle schoolers, right? Your friends are having sex, well, now you're going to have sex. So,
but I understand where people are coming from and saying that there's some benefits, and we have to. This is where we look at the benefits and drawbacks, because you know, this is where you
it's
have
a double-edged sword.
Well,
everything is a double-edged sword. Everything is a double-edged sword. And finding that, you have to find ground and balance with everything. It doesn't matter what topic it is.
Yes, and the thing is like, sit down and I tell people, I said, when it comes to men, boundaries and discipline are extremely important to men. The reason being is that if that man is undisciplined and he's emotional and he's not rational, when he gets angry, what is he going to do to you?
He's going to go lash out at you.
Exactly. And you don't want to do anything that's going to foster that in a man. You don't, because he's
Yeah.
going to be a weapon that will just ultimately destroy you. And you don't want
Mhm.
that. You don't want to do things to turn that man into a weapon. And this is what people don't understand. Like, I'm
Mhm.
like, women get away with doing other things because of the way they're wired, but men, it's like you don't want to make a ticking time bomb. Like, be very
Mhm.
careful with what you do with men, because we're funny creatures, and so forth. And so, I mean, I watch women talking about things, and I watch what they're doing, and I see the
Mhm.
behavior, and I think about what they're saying and how that would affect men, and I'm like, you don't want that. You don't want that.
They're different. Yeah.
Yes, because the effect that it will have, like things, for example, that will help men to develop into being men, will destroy women.
Mhm.
And ultimately,
Yeah.
things that women will benefit from will not. They
Help
will be
men.
yes. And
Yeah.
so we have to look at, that's why we need two perspectives, right?
Mhm.
Because we're different, and we don't need both of them. This is why I say you need a mother and a father, because you need two
Mhm.
different perspectives in order to
Yes.
to get centered, right? Otherwise, you
Mhm.
go far too far to one side, right?
Yeah. Well, even as a single mom, I've noticed it's like hard because like I can only parent so much as a single mom, but it's like I need that male energy to come in and stick up for me when it comes to my child, because she just is, you know what I mean? It's hard as a mom to get your kid to listen to you when you're the only parent. So they don't have respect. They don't care about you until somebody else comes in and says, because it's an ego thing. I've noticed it's an ego thing. And I had the same thing with my mom, where I didn't want to listen to her because I was the one who knew all, and like that's how kids are. They're very egotistical when they're born. They're born with the seven deadly sins, right? We all, as humans, are born with the seven deadly sins that we need to overpower and overcome. And part of that is building the emotional intelligence, which I believe the schools block kids from learning because they're forced to sit down. They don't get time to process their emotions and their feelings and be upset and disappointed, right? They're just forced to sit down and learn a certain thing. And so what we're seeing is a lack of emotional intelligence in the men who are lashing out at their women. If I piss somebody off and they can't contain themselves, they have to hit me because they are so upset. You lack emotional intelligence. That's the way I look at it. And that's what I've seen in a lot of my partners, is that they lacked emotional intelligence. And so when I came with Andrew, sure, he got a little emotional and excited at times, but I've never once felt like he was angry or wanted to hit me or come after me or anything. So when I saw his ex-wife saying that about him, that's how I knew she was a liar. Because I've been around plenty of men who they will, if you say something that they think is disrespectful, I mean, they will come after you. They will lash out. They will yell at you. They'll belittle you. They'll say mean things about you. As a
No,
woman, that's what I dealt with from men. If I have an opinion, I'm not allowed to have an opinion because I'm a woman.
well, and it's the lack of self control. Like, I mean, I grew up with five women. If I was like out of control, I would have lost my mind, right?
Yeah.
But I understood that a lot of the things is that a man has to use his actions to deal with a
Mm-hmm.
woman, especially when she's out of control and angry, right? And you have to
Mm-hmm.
understand that she'll say things that sound rational, even though her brain is shut off and her mouth is
Yeah.
just going up. Women will say some ridiculous things when they're angry, but it'll make sense, but they're just like their brain shut off, right? And
Yeah.
so you just kind of like, okay, I'll just chalk that up because she's having a moment and so forth. But
Yeah.
bef- kind of circling back, I wanted to you look at this before we close because we're getting up on time. But this woman here, she listen to what she's asking for in an assistant. She's a woman that works in the porn industry, but you want to listen to what people. This is just indicative of the type of thinking of things that people want, and so forth, because she's asking for an assistant.
So I kind of want to get a new assistant after my last one did not work out. But at the same time, I'm like, these are things like what I need an assistant to do. You gotta be the man around my crib. Like, if I need you to change my air filters, I need you to get up on that ladder. If I need something built, I need you to build it. Like, those are the things I'm really bad at. But then also, like, I need you to help me with the dishes when I need it, or any cleaning that I don't have the time to do. It's like, I don't even know how you find a person that can do the man roles and the woman roles. And then also you have to be okay with my job, because I might need you to edit my pictures because I don't have time to, or make some gifts for my OF, and I might need you to package up panties for me. Like, it's just like, where do I put seeking assistant for all these different things. Because I really just need like a life partner that I pay to come here, you know, some of the days of the week and just do everything that I don't have the time to do. And that's everything. Like, I have a house cleaner that comes twice a week, but I need help every day of the week because I have 2 kids to do, and also all the things that need to be done around the house that I can't do myself or that I don't want to do myself. And then all the things with my business. And then it's just like, where do I put this? That, and then I have to add and sneak in like, must be okay with adult stuff. I feel like it's gonna be very hard for me.
I mean, I don't judge her for her work that she does, because I have friends who are in that line of work. But it sounds like she needs a life partner. And yeah, you're going to have to find somebody who does accept your jobs and your works. And there are men out there who will accept that. That's what I found. Some men don't, and that's okay. But it sounds like she needs a life partner and she needs somebody to help take care of the house and the kids, which is, again, goes back to that 2-person household. You need 2 people. You cannot run and raise children by yourself as a single person. It's too hard, whether you're a mom or a dad.
Well, she's asking from a perspective of what she's looking for and asking for, because she's asking for a lot. First of all, you can't pay somebody to do that effect. It's just not going to happen, right? Like,
Well, it's not like so she needs a partner. She's a business partner. So it's
a lot of things she's looking for. She needs a husband, right?
Yeah.
But then you're gonna also have to look at the thing is that men don't normally want to share their woman. They don't, and if they do, there's some other things that you have to begin to starting to consider, because even though you may feel that he's accepting you, you have to understand that men are not wired like women, and so. A man that does this, he's going to have some other issues that come along with this. And this is where women, they don't see that, because sometimes it's like we have a tendency to think that we're like each other, right? In certain ways. And for me, that got burned out of my head growing up as being the only boy in a household of 5 women. I'm like, no, there's no chance. Like, I was like, that delusion got slapped out of my head when I was a kid. So
it can be a little wild. I will say we are very opinionated, and sometimes our delusions, our mind travels where we make up scenarios in our head. And that's why I think women are more psychic, as intuitive, is because we do think about so many different aspects, but sometimes those fears create a narrative where we just start going with it and we start creating our own narrative in our head, and that can cause us to be very emotional when we shouldn't even be being emotional. Like, what we're being upset about is not even something to be upset about. And that's what I've been finding out with women, how we think and how we are. What I've been observing in women as well is that, we go off of our own fears and we project.
And women like this, like, you don't have to be in this line of work for women to do this. They have this kind of sense of wanting to do things. You need what a man is going to be best in his situation if he is leading by example. This is not what's fundamentally happening. So when you're going to get those kind of man that's going to come in there and have the woman lead, you're automatically signing yourself up for problems, right? Yep. And the chances of you're not going to get a man that's in his natural state, and it just you're lowering your chances of success. And I understand that you want certain things, but like you said, some things require a trade-off, because if you want to be present with a parent, can you be working all those times? No, you can't. You have to start centering your work around your child in order
Hence why she's asking for an assistant, right? That's why she's asking for an assistant, because she has kids to raise where she can't do all these things when she's raising her kids. It's because it's work. You're doing a job now that, like, we need to focus on our kids and not on our jobs. But unfortunately, as a single mom, I have thought about doing OnlyFans. I'll be honest, just because it's like, how do I survive and be able to stay home and raise my kid? You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like you become desperate, where you do get into this line of work. That's what these women's happen to these women, because our society is not helpful for women. You go to ask for help at the welfare office and they're coming after you taking your kids. So you have to do whatever you can under the table to make money just to survive with your children. And that's the sad part of the society that we're living in.
Okay, we're probably going to go a few minutes over. I'll just have to edit some of this. But I want to bring something up because you said something about this. And this is a clip because women think about that, and I understand why women do this.
Yeah.
Because this is, and we're gonna have to talk about this more on this topic since you brought this up. Let me bring this up here quickly before we close this down because where is it? I just saw it. There we go. I'll bring this up because this girl, she is exceptionally. Um, I mean, she doesn't think about the long. She thinks about what's going on, and women, especially when they're in this situation, they tend to focus more on in what's in front of them and lay out their thinking very differently. Men think differently in as we think about not just now but the long-term consequences, because this is what we're designed to do in order for us to protect our families, where women are not having to worry about them in normal circumstances because they should have a man looking after them while they're tending to the things that they need to have their attention on, and women have to think in the way they do in order to best look after the little children because they need that. That's suited for this. But listen to what she says here.
I usually ask my brother like once a month, like what's the craziest story that he has because his sister has an OnlyFans. So I'm gonna call him right now. I don't know, is he in school? What time is it? School. Let's see here. I released some crazy shit on my OnlyFans, so let's see if what the updated story is. Hey, what's the craziest story you have this month about me having an OnlyFans? Like, what's the craziest thing that's happened to you?
Okay, so this random kid I don't even know came up to me and he was like, "Is this your sister?" and showed me a picture.
Okay, all right.
Wait, no, I'm not finished yet. Wait, I'm not finished.
I don't want to know that.
Finish the story. All right, so basically what happened was he came up to me and showed me a picture, but it wasn't just a picture of what I thought. It was actually a video. And
all right, I gotta go. Bye. I can't hear that. I can't hear that. What video? I don't want to know. Oh, he texted me. I'll just buy him a car for his birthday. He'll be fine.
I mean, it's sad that kids. Here's what's wrong: is that if people are choosing this line of work, for people to use it as a bully tactic and come in and say, "Oh, look at this," like knowing that's your sister, it's like that's bullying, that's harassment at that point. You know what I mean? It's not whatever they're doing on their own site is on them. You know.
I get that. Like what they're doing to the guy is wrong. But what the situation is that you have to account for people are going to make those kinds of decisions regardless. This is how you analyze and risk. And this is what men do. A man goes and he knows that when he does this, that some type of thing, unless he's being really short-sighted and he's drug addict and he's thinking about his next fix. And this is where you don't want a man that does this because you need the man to assess the threat to say that these are going to have these are going to be consequences because even though this shouldn't happen, people are still going to do it. Now, this guy, what I listened to her talking with her and her brother, he is being traumatized to hell. She's like, "Oh, I'll just get him a car to make him feel good while she's traumatizing him. She is she is creating.
Well, she's not. Other people are using her content to traumatize them, and we can't put the blame on the people who. I get they made the content, but we can't always put the blame on that people. You have to put the blame on the people who are actually traumatizing that boy.
Yes,
because that's illegal. You have to be able to share that stuff with other people.
I get that, but she is creating the avenue for that to happen. Yeah, if she never did this, they couldn't show him his sister doing that because that's you just destroy the brother. Brother doesn't want to see that. Like his mind now, that can never be taken back. And when you look at the damage that was caused, the money that she's making is not worth the damage that she's caused to her brother. It's not. But for her, she's like, I'll just buy him a car to make him feel good, knowing that more people are traumatizing. And some of the things that she does, she talks about how she used her brother to go viral for her own OnlyFans. And then
that's crazy.
Like, I mean, this is the type of dynamics that you sit down and have to understand. Well, what are the long-term effects? Like what that kid did showing him was wrong, but it wouldn't be possible if she didn't make the choice that she did. And so you have to sit down and weigh whether or not is this worth it? Is this worth me doing this when it's doing this to my brother? That's really it. Because what happens if your brother gets completely broken and then his life goes down in train wreck, and maybe what happens if he turns out to harm somebody because of it?
But that goes back to accountability. If he is traumatized, because I've seen pictures and videos that I did not want to see of ex-partners, of parents, of things like that. And not because it was on a site, just because I was a snoopy person. And so those are things that I have to take accountability for the things that I saw. And like, I can't use that, oh, well, you shouldn't have taken those pictures. I would have never seen that, like I have to take accountability for the things that I've witnessed and seen in myself and overcome that. And that's just something that he's going to have to do. In my personal opinion, that's something that he's going to have to overcome. That's here for me, nakedness is a beautiful thing. I don't know what kind of videos or content she's making. I know some women get real dirty on OnlyFans. I get that.
She was having
but some
sex.
women do have what?
She was having sex.
Yeah, she's having sex. Okay, that's people do that. People have sex. And I know it's gross that our brother's seeing that. I just feel like whatever people are doing in their own lives, that is on them to do. If they are making money that way, that's good for them. It's not my life to judge that, because again, I have friends who do that, who I know are loving parents, who are loving people, and that I don't want to have them feel shamed for the line of work that they're in.
This is nothing whether or not she's a horrible person for what she's doing.
Yeah.
I'm just examining what's happening as a result of this. And these are things that we all have to sit down and consider. Because I can tell you right now, I actually looked at a girl. She's a porn star or does adult sex work or whatever. She wrote a Substack about OnlyFans and their platform. And when she was asking questions about it in there, when I saw what she read, I knew exactly the answers to the questions that she was seeking. And I knew what they were doing when they designed the platform in the manner in which they did. And the platform was designed by men. And the men who did this, they understood what they were doing. The men who did this understood that what that girl and her brother was experiencing was going to happen. They knew this. They actually are. And if you look at the way the platform is designed to create more addiction, to create more focus to the women, and it is not a sustainable platform. It will eventually collapse on itself because of the way it is. Because if you only have so much that you can do before it actually implodes on itself, and it's creating an unsustainable market, and it's giving a lot of false illusions, and it's creating more problems than it is going to be benefits. And that the minds that were behind this, that understand this is where the big problem is, because that girl, she's trying to make her bag. Her making her bag, she's looking at more than some of the consequences. But there are people who put this in place that understood the consequences. And that's where you're having issues.
Yeah, it just goes back to the whole psychological warfare with it. People who create things, it's psychological warfare in certain aspects, and there's all different types, and this is one of them that we're experiencing.
Because the like they say, sex work was always around, but it was never around like this and accessible to children in this manner. And when you do that, this is where you have big problems. And so you have to put the brakes on it, because if we don't want them sexualizing in school, you shouldn't just say, okay, here, Johnny, take your little iPhone and go watch like the nastiest thing that you can imagine.
Yeah.
Right. With no restrictions. So, I mean, if people are going to do that, because I'm not going to tell somebody what they should and shouldn't do, but they need to understand the consequences and then take appropriate steps to make sure that these things aren't going where they shouldn't be, because you got to be more responsible with that. And the people who are providing those platforms, they need to be a lot more responsible. And a lot of the times they're not. And you see with what's happening with Pornhub and all those things, right? So
things leak out,
And so, I mean, that's just, we'll talk about this another day, because I'm sure you've got some ideas. And I mean, these are good discussions that we have different perspectives and so forth. And so, yes,
it's healthy. It's very healthy. You know what I mean? Give each other different.
You get to learn a lot, right? I mean, because like I sit down, I'm not going to claim to know everything about women. And I learned something.
You can't, until you're a woman, until you walk a day in my shoes, you don't even know, that's how I look at it. Until you meet you. I don't know what you've been through, because I'm not walking in your shoes. I haven't seen the same world view and have had the same experiences as you. So I can't speak on, your views and how you feel because of the things that you've seen. And I have things in my own life that I've seen and I've accepted because I love people. I just want to love people.
Well, and it's good because I see your perspective and see that, because I'm like, okay, because being this way, I think a certain way, but women are different, and you
Yeah.
see that there's a necessary meaning of the two perspective, because if you go too far one way, you'll fall off
Yeah.
the cliff. If you go too far the other way, and this is where you see, this is where this is the biggest example of why you need men and women, because a man by himself will just neglect certain things. A woman by herself will neglect certain things. And then when you kind of come in between, you kind of offset each other. And if we, like what we were saying, go back to bringing back men and women into stable families, we'll have more sensibility. Because if you keep them away, then you get more extremes. And so this is a good example of hearing two different perspectives, and then you can kind of figure it out. So let's get some closing thoughts from you. Actually, I'll pray and then I'll give you closing thoughts on our discussion. All right. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the hope that you've given us and the work that you're doing here. And Lord, let's watch over the children and watch over the men and the women who are being destroyed in this wicked, evil system, and help them that they would come together to find the solutions and protect the children, most importantly, is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. So this is up to you, your final thoughts.
I feel like our conversation definitely went all over the place today, and I think we had very good conversations about our different perspectives. I think that it's good also that we're coming together for these. I've done now multiple podcasts on people who are sharing their stories in the court system. That's my biggest fight, is the kids who are being affected by these court systems. And I do very much appreciate the conversations that you and I are able to have, even when we aren't always on the same exact page. It's very helpful for society and for our country to come together like this, to show that we can disagree on things, but also come together for the same issue, is that it's all comes back to the kids. That's who we mainly care about, is the children. And that's what that's our number one thing, is that we should be focusing on the children and their health and their mental health, and getting our country back into a mentally healthy state of mind.
There we go. Thank you. I mean, and I'll just close with saying here is that, like my oldest daughter, her mother was involved in sex work, and she still is, and so forth. And I grew up with a lot of people in this lifestyle. I saw that what things happen, and I know that even in some of the people that were doing some of the pornography, some of the stuff that they do, they're doing them for extended period of times that people don't normally do, and some of them get injured, right?
They get stuck.
And then I listen to some of what the women are saying in this. So we have to take everything with a grain of salt and just kind of look at it and understand what it is, and look at the actions and separate the people from the actions, because I can have a conversation with somebody that I don't agree with what they're doing whatsoever, because I can think it's extremely wrong, but just because I don't like what you're doing doesn't mean that I can't treat you with respect and have a conversation with you. Obviously,
exactly.
Killing people, that's a different story. This is a crime.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean,
absolutely.
if it's something that I think is morally wrong, whatever, right? Like, you're still a human being. Do I do things that I don't agree with? Yes, I've done that. So I'm not perfect. So why should I judge anybody else? But we'll have more of these conversations. I mean, I look forward to it, and we'll have more guests coming on and dealing with these problems that we definitely need to have happen. And everybody, thank you for coming on until we see you again. All right. Take care.